So we're always asking, why do they want immigration? Why? Why are they so obsessed? And it genuinely is about systems, structures, and population projections going into the future. They really are. And I know people like, no, there must be some ulterior motive. There must be something more. And I'm sure for certain named individuals, that is the case. But for the shitlibs as a class, it is genuinely that they think the world will come to an end if the population goes down a bit. Now, I don't think the world's going to come to an end. And we have some evidence to suggest that it won't. We have some evidence to suggest that actually it will be okay. We'll get by. We will figure it out. And remember, they've had these sort of problems with population projections for centuries. You can go back to Thomas Malthus saying, look, the population is going straight up. We're going to have mass starvation everywhere because we just don't produce enough food. And if all things remain the same, all of the variables remain constant, then yes, his calculation is not wrong. However, variables change. Things change. Circumstances change. People adapt. Things get invented. People give things up. Things are different from era to era, and therefore, unsurprisingly, people actually respond to their environment and the stimulus and incentives in their environment. But if you don't take that into account and you just assume that everything will carry on like it always has forever, well then yes, you would look at Europe's population crisis visualized and go, my God, look at all that red. That means, ka-ching, we need to import 1 billion Bomalians, because otherwise, I mean, even then, there are still plenty of places that have the minus 75% projections by 2100. You see that, northwestern Europe isn't one of those places because people will actually want to move here because they think that we have functional societies. And that's only because we used to have functional societies. Less so now, obviously. But look at it's the fear-mongering of it. Like, evil, angry red. Ooh, happy, peaceful, placid blue. Like, green, blue. Like, sorry, I don't care. I don't care if it goes evil and scary and red. I don't want to be flooded with immigrants. This is just the end of the line. We've got to that point where it's like, no, the answer is just no. And the thing is, the British public is with me. 46% of people in this country just want no more immigration and for millions of them to go home. They're not worried about the pensions or anything like that. They're worried about losing their country entirely. And this is just, again, something that has been... It is a genuine concern. It is an issue that if we fall into a kind of population death spiral, then the country can't recover. But it doesn't... The nature... Just because we have a slight decline in population is not the end of the world. And actually, one of the problems we particularly have in England is massive overpopulation. The reason the country feels so unlivable at the moment is there's just too many goddamn people here. But then you do have the other side, which is going to be Italy, which is going to have a serious dramatic spike downwards. In Italy, the birth rate is 1.21 children per woman. And I've seen estimates that it's lower than that as well. That's 1. And in Korea, it's less than 1. South Korea, it's less than 1. So these are countries that are in a death spiral. But that doesn't mean, A, that you should replace the population, because that is not just an economic question. That is also a moral question. That is a question of historical continuity that is being asked there. And if the people in Italy at the moment choose to self-select themselves out of the great chain of being and decide, you know what, my lineage ends with me, 4.5 billion years of evolution ends with me, or God's imperative over the human race ends with me, whatever it is, okay, well, fine, but some of them will continue, and that means that Italian civilization will change, right? And our civilizations will change. We will have to adapt. We'll be forced to adapt. And this means that some of the promises that were made in the 20th century, well, they probably won't be upheld because, well, we decided not to do those things that were required to uphold them. And we have to pay the price for that. We made our choices. We made our choices 30 years ago, and now we have to we have to deal with the choices that we've made. I did a talk the other day, which I'll leave linked in the description, called the future of post-liberal politics, in which I pointed out that not only are we going to... The bill is always due to be paid, right? It's entirely possible that the 45% of people who are just like, no, I've had enough and I don't want any more and I want millions to go home, I think those people are going to get their way in the next 10 years or so. And that means that the population will stop growing. In fact, it will start shrinking. And that means we will have to change our expectations. If the governments can't afford the welfare state, if they can't afford the pensions, then they don't get paid for. It's literally that simple. And so people will have to change how they deal with things. And that means, basically, returning to what was normal prior to the 20th century, which is families supporting one another. That was just the norm. Children supported their parents and had children of their own because they wanted support in their old age. And I think, really, I mean, I'm just as guilty as anyone saying, look, it's birth control that's doing this. It's contraception. It's abortion. And yes, those are the mechanical ways in which the population is kept under control by women. But the reason that women choose these things is because they feel that they have an out. They feel like, well, I can just get a carer to look after me when I'm old. I don't need children to do it. The government will do it. And so the safety net is allowing women the freedom to go, no, my bloodline ends with me. I don't care. I don't have to have children. Why should I? And that, I think, is the ultimate reason that women are fundamentally choosing not to have as many children. But when you need those children, because you know you're going to be old and you know you need someone to look after you, at least if you've had children, you'll have a bunch of people who love you, who want to do it, because they care about you. God willing, my children will want to look after me when I'm very old, right? And so this will be a distinct change in the kind of civilization that we have. And it feels like it's unimaginable, because for the entirety of the sort of latter half of the 20th century up until now, so basically in living memory, we've had all of those things. And they've been an assumed constant forever. But actually, I don't think they are going to be a constant forever, because I think, actually, people don't really want to give away their civilizations, and it just means they've made their choice, and they will have to do something differently when it comes to those issues in society that we always had traditional structures to deal with, and abandoned them in the 20th century. These are things we will have to figure out once more, from scratch, basically, how we're going to do it. But this, I think, will be a spur to changing this problem. When women realise, oh right, there won't be the state to just look after me when I'm old, well then they'll be like, oh no, I need to have children. Okay, what do I need to have children? I need a husband. Suddenly, the collapsed marriage rate will fix itself. Suddenly, the childlessness will fix itself. Suddenly, the incel problem will fix itself. All of these things can be fixed if the government is stopped from interceding in what is actually the natural course of human existence. And we've got models of this all over the world. They're all over the world. There are countries that don't have an infinite welfare state, that don't have a pension system, that don't have a healthcare system. Countries in which people have to look after themselves. Because, and this is what I said in the talk, and again, I'll link in the description, because it really comes to that Western fantasy of liberating ourselves from the responsibilities we have to the people around us, to the people in our own families, to the people that we love. That's not feasible. That's a thing that is not going to happen forever, and we have basically burned up the social credit that the West had built up until the point of the 20th century, and I think that's just going to be the way that is. I personally am not expecting to get a pension. I don't think, if you're my age or younger, you probably should plan to not get a pension. Because, I mean, don't get me wrong, we might be lucky enough that the system limps along for long enough for us to have a pension. But it's entirely possible that it won't. And so you need to make your contingency plans now. You are not a boomer. You did not live in the golden era of Western civilization. You have to make your plans now, because you will need this later on. And don't expect the governments to have any solution other than replacement migration. Like, it's just all that they think about. All of the politicians, they have nothing. Because what they would have to talk about are questions of character. They would have to have questions of the teleology, the goal of a human life. What is the overarching narrative of a human life? And for them, it's liberation from being the human being that you are. From having obligations to your parents, from becoming a parent yourself, and your children then having obligations to you, and them having obligations to their country and their local communities, and so on and so forth. All of boomer politics. This is what 20th century liberalism is, an attempt to liberate us from that, so we can, I don't know, go on cruises and play slots in our old age. I don't know what the boomers wanted in the end. I don't know what they thought they were getting. That doesn't appeal to me at all. But this is what they thought they were going to do, right? And that has been done for the generation up till now, but that's not going to be the future. So plan accordingly. Because this, I mean, they're just like, look, we don't want a one-size-fits-all immigration system. Can we just have the immigrants in Scotland so we can have people, bodies, just living humans who will do things for us? It's like, well, A, I mean, how are you going to keep them in Scotland? You know, what's the guarantee they stay there? And B, no, frankly, I mean, that's not the solution. But anyway, all of this comes from the sort of year 2000 UN replacement migration document that has been filtered around for 25 years and has been the only way that they know to deal with this. Now, even in this, they say, look, there are going to be serious challenges with cultural integration because you will need a lot of immigrants to replace the population that isn't replacing itself because of the intercession of the state and the wide availability of birth control. And, okay, that's true. And even there are parts in it where they're even like, look, we're not even sure we recommend this because this will cause problems. But what other options do they have? What are the solutions they have to this problem? And the answer is they just don't have any because they are catatonic on the subject. They are convinced that the world is just going to collapse around us. But there was actually a study recently that suggested actually there's not really any evidence that aging or declining populations cause a massive economic collapse. Now, it's not to say that it doesn't cause a shrinkage of the overall GDP, because if you have fewer people, and those people would earn, say, £30,000 or $50,000, whatever it is a year, and you have fewer of them, yeah, sure, the GDP overall goes down, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the country goes into an economic tailspin. I read the abstract, and you see what I mean. Concerns about declining or aging populations often centre on the fear that fewer people will translate into a weaker economy and lower living standards, but these fears are frequently based on oversimplified or misapplied interpretations of economic models and appear to be driven more by political agendas than evidence. Oh, really? Can you even imagine? I believe you. I believe you. In reality, long-term prosperity depends more on how societies invest in education, skills and technology, not just on how many people they have. Well, that's us fucked then, isn't it? Because I don't know if you've noticed, but our education, our technology, our innovation, these are not great in Europe anyway. We've really miscarried there because we decided, you know what, we'll have the lowest quality education for just millions of foreign kids. And that'll be how we solve the GDP question. And actually, there is another route, which is just make sure you have higher quality things and have higher standards. Expect more of people, and actually, they're probably prepared to rise to the challenge. They examined national data at the global scale to test whether slower population growth or aging populations are linked to worse economic or social outcomes, using 9 different indices of socioeconomic performance: domestic comprehensive wealth, income equality, research and development expenditure, patent applications, human capital, corruption perception index, freedom, planetary pressure-adjusted human development index, healthy life expectancy at birth. We find no evidence that they are. In fact, we find countries with a low or negative population growth perform better on average for all indicators, and that even within country time, series show that most older and slower growing populations fare better on average. As in, think about this: Africa, massively young population, how prosperous. Europe, old population, how prosperous. This is actually something that is, well, quite self-evident in many ways. And so bringing in 1 billion Somalians actually doesn't improve the economic welfare of the country itself. In fact, I would argue we can see that it's making everything worse. And so not only are we not actually properly supporting a system that they're concerned about being heavily loaded, but we're actually putting extra strain on it because these people are diverting resources away from the system rather than paying into the system. But anyway, who can be surprised? They say these findings challenge common assumptions and highlight the need to move beyond fear-based and politically motivated narratives towards a more informed understanding of what truly supports thriving societies. And I think that's probably correct. I think there probably is something to this, having higher human capital in our own countries, rather than just turning us into Mumbai-style slums or Cairo-style slums. Yeah, that's probably the case. That's no doubt the case. But the fear-mongering gets clicks, remember. They're convinced that we're all going to die if we don't have 1 billion Somalians here, and that actually the countries are just dead, even if this does cause a kind of make a more breathable environment. But also, like I said, when I was talking about this, I actually think that the decline in population is natural. I think it's not terminal, and I think what it will do is basically when it forces the state to admit I can't pay everyone's pensions, then it will just reset things to make people think, oh no, actually I need to have that family for myself. It's actually a need. It's not a luxury anymore. It's actually a need, a physical need that I will have in the future. And so actually, I don't think we need to worry about it that much. We can, I think, just stop immigration. And I think actually things might work out okay.